Oh, hello. Today, I want to get another vlog going, and this time we are going to be treating ourselves to some Japanese mysteries. So we're calling this Japanese June July because I'm starting this in June, but I expect this will go through July. I have a bunch of Japanese mystery, horror, thrillery kind of books. Two I don't think I grabbed, but I plan to read soon. One is the Tokyo Murders, I think the Tokyo Zodiac Murders. And then the other is the latest Yokido Ayatsuji translation that just came out. I think I'm going to save that as a treat for my birthday, to be my birthday book. But yeah, I think I'll probably read those during this vlog. But the other ones I thought I would tell you all about. One is Out by Natsuo Kirino. This one is like a horror thrillery kind of book, but it's described as a literary mystery. It is the story of a brutal murder in the staid Tokyo suburbs as a young mother who works the night shift, making box lunches, strangles her abusive husband, and then seeks the help of her co-workers to dispose of the body and cover up her crime. So this, I think, is sort of a suspensey literary kind of genre. We've got the Noh Mask Murder, which is a classic Japanese locked room mystery by Akimitsu Takagi. And this one I picked up because I was in a bookstore and I needed to buy something. And this seemed like as it said, a classic locked room mystery. Let's see when this was originally written. Out, I think, is more recent, but this one is from 1951. Death and madness have haunted the Chizui family for years. Now a strange figure has been seen wandering their mansion at night, wearing a sinister Noh mask that is said to bear a centuries-old curse. Yeah, that sounds rad. I think I'm really gonna like that. So that's more of a classic one. Another more classic one is this collection from Edogawa Renpo, who is sort of maybe the equivalent of someone like an Agatha Christie in Japanese mystery tradition. He was the first one to really, or maybe not the first, but in my memory, he's like the big guy who took sort of the traditions of British golden age of detective fiction and brought them into a Japanese context. And allegedly his nom de plume comes from a Japanesization of the name Edgar Allan Poe. I don't know if that's true or not, but that is what I have heard before. And this is a collection of short stories and novellas, I believe, which I am a sucker for. I love mystery short stories, so I think this is going to be pretty thrilling. And I've been wanting to read something from him just because of his standing within the genre. Yeah, it says he's regarded as the father of Japanese mystery writing. Okay, and it's saying Renpo derived his pen name from the Japanese pronunciation of Edgar Allan Poe. Okay, that's not officially on the back of the book, so I guess it's more than just a rumor. Then, a more recent one, The Man Who Died 7 Times by Yasuhiko Nishizawa. And it says the classic time loop murder mystery, but I've seen this come out recently, so maybe it just recently got translated, but in the middle of the family New Year's gathering at his home, grandfather Fukigami is murdered, but not for the last time. So I think this is playing with time, so a little bit of a speculative mystery. Okay, it was originally published in 95, so it's not as old as some of what I think of the classic ones are, but it's only recently come into translation here stateside. So I think that kind of speculative mystery sounds very fun. The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This is less of a, I think that this is more of like a dystopian thriller, but it's on an unnamed island. Objects are disappearing. Most inhabitants are oblivious to these changes, while those few able to recall the lost objects live in fear of the draconian Memory Police, who are committed to ensuring that what has disappeared remains forgotten. So I think this is probably the least direct mystery kind of a book, and more, I think, maybe sci-fi dystopia thriller, but I feel like there's enough kind of suspense and playing with memory that it feels like it's in the same it's not like totally out of place in a TBR like this. Okay, I've got 2 more, plus those other 2, so this is a lot of books. That's why I'm thinking this is going to take me a couple months. But The Master Key by Masako Togawa. This is the prize-winning Japanese murder mystery classic. When we say classic, are we talking the 90s or are we talking actual classic? What do we mean by this? It seems like they're throwing classic around pretty generously here. Okay, this is from 1962, so this is genuinely, you know, a little bit older. But let's see here. We've got a Tokyo boarding house where there's a bunch of mysteriousness happening. When the master key to all 150 rooms is stolen, the residents are gripped by paranoia. Who is sneaking about and prying into matters they thought long forgotten? Who indeed? Let's find out. So, got that. And then the last one. This is more horror than it is mystery or thriller, but it's called Revenge, 11 Dark Tales, also by Yoko Ogawa. So this is the same author of The Memory Police, and that's part of why I ended up putting that book into this TBR. These are 11 short stories, and I think they're all kind of horror adjacent. So yeah, I got 2 short story collections. I've got 1 author I've been meaning to try, and then I have 2 other authors that I know that I enjoy. Those are the other 2 that are not physically here in the room with me. But anyway, we got a lot of good stuff. I did a project probably 2 or 3 years ago now where I tried a bunch of Japanese murder mysteries and, you know, kind of did a little bit of a deep dive into the history of it that I could find, because a lot of the sources about it are in Japanese, so limited access for me to get that kind of historical context. But I enjoyed putting that video together. Since then, I have been reading Japanese mysteries, you know, kind of sprinkled in here and there, but I'm looking forward that I have another excuse to really do a deep dive binge. I did just finish reading the Seishi Yokomizo mysteries with Detective Kendaichi, and I enjoyed those. I mean, I liked some better than others, but overall I've enjoyed that. So yeah, I've been enjoying this region's tradition of mystery, and I'm excited to spend some more time with them, and we'll see if I've got any new favorites that come out of this. Here's hoping. I hope I do. I hope I have a couple of 5 stars in here. We'll have to see. Hey, howdy, hey. I have been making progress on 3 books, and I've actually finished 3 books. So I'm going to just talk about them together. Interesting findings, and I'm glad that I've given myself time to space out this video, because I do think I want to take a little bit of a break, because I am seeing a theme that I think if I were to immediately dive into some more Japanese mysteries, probably would keep me from being able to just appreciate them for what they are. But I just binged the last 3 in the Detective Kendaichi series, and then reading these 3 right after, I'm like, I definitely am seeing a theme. And some of it is that I'm picking older books, I should concede that. But okay, so the first one I finished was The Noh Mask Murder by Akimitsu Takagi. This is short, which I think is to its benefit. I think if this had been any longer, I probably would not have enjoyed it as much, and I may have even DNF'd it. But it is it's a classic of the locker room murder mystery trope, and it is very Christie-esque. Like, you can really see the influences in it of Christie. It actually spoils the murder of Roger Ackroyd in the first 5 pages. So if you have not read the murder of Roger Ackroyd, do not read this book. But it sets things up, and then it has it's pretty metatextual, all things considered, especially for 1951. It's a framing device where the author is a character in the book, and then he is getting letters from a detective who is sending him the diary of somebody. So it's like a book within a book within a book kind of a thing. And it's this family who has this curse on them, allegedly, and, you know, they keep dying in this strange way, and there's this haunted mask, this Noh Mask, that might be involved with it. It's a family, a wealthy family, again, like I'm finding and reading more of these. there's a lot of similarities in terms of the types of characters that get, or like the types of setting and characters to the golden age of detective fiction in the British context, because it's a lot of these families who post-war have fallen on hard times. This is kind of in that ilk, or in that vein. Yeah, and it's, I think, good. I think I have read enough golden age of detective fiction books that I guessed what was going on very quickly. So I didn't find this very surprising, just because I know the tropes very well, and this is very much honoring these classic tropes. So I guess in that sense, like, it didn't delight me, but it entertained me. It was very comfy, I would say, with the exception of a lot of problematic portrayals of women, which we will see is the recurring thing that I need to, you know, take a break from. In this case, there's a lot of problematic portrayals of women's sexuality and their mental health. Again, this seems to be a very common theme. Also, can I also say a lot of incest in these books? I don't know enough. I would love if somebody understands, like, culturally how incest is viewed in Japan in this period, like, let's say from 1900 to 1980, would love some insight in that, because people talk about, like, the amount of incest that happens in these books is honestly kind of shocking. Like, and some of it is like the one that I associate as like old-timey incest, which is like cousin marriage situation to keep the bloodlines close. That I find a little less shocking, though again, we are in the 20th century, so it's still a little shocking. But we're like, in some of these books, we're talking like uncle, niece, like it's just a lot. So anyway, would love any insight there. But yeah, I'd say the biggest detractor of this is its portrayal of women, but overall I found this entertaining. And like, if you enjoy this kind of golden age locked room mystery, you know, generational trauma and drama, you will enjoy this book. Then I tried to read Out by Natsuo Kirino, and this is well written, but again, if my misogyny meter had not been already pretty full, I might have kept going. I ended up DNFing this at about 60 pages in. This is already dealing with a lot of internalized and externalized misogyny. It's these group of 4 women who all work together at this sort of like mass producing lunch factory, like food prep factory. And they are all experiencing various levels of physical, verbal, domestic, sexual abuse, and dealing with it in different ways. One of them ends up killing her abusive husband, and when I stop reading, they are like working together to try to cover it up. I assume someone's going to figure out what's going on and things will go from there, a la, like this, I'm assuming is like a bad version of Goodbye Earl by the Dixie Chicks, like where they don't get away with it. That's my assumption, since the murder and cover-up is happening so early in this book. It's well written, but it reads very much like a domestic suspense, which is not my favorite kind of crime fiction book anyway. And then again, just with those themes, I'm just not vibing with it enough to stick in there. This was published in 97 too, so this is not like, I mean, 30 years is a long time, but like, I don't know. I feel like everybody was pretty against domestic abuse 30 years ago. This is where I do get it. There's some presentism that happens when people are talking about these issues of like people like, oh, the one that drives me crazy is when people talk about racial slurs, and like in the 2000s, people just were saying these words all the time. And I'm like, no, they weren't. I went to fundamentalist evangelical school and was very, I knew nobody saying those words. So because we were like, any whiff of it was stamped down. That was in the Bible Belt. I just don't believe when people say it was a different time with those things. Like, anyway, I'm just like, they weren't that different. Okay. Like we have, I was reading about this, or not reading, I was watching a video essay about a like sexual coercion scandal in the highest levels of physics academia in the 80s. And that guy was already trying to get the victims to stay silent to cover it up because he knew people wouldn't think it was okay. Okay. People have known, sorry, it's not this book's fault. I'll put the book down. People have known these things were not okay for a long time. So when people try to like make the argument of like, oh, it's a different time, like, I don't know. In this case, I will acknowledge it's a different culture. So if there's a different cultural context, I'd be open to that. But this is the 90s. I'm just not interested in this level of misogyny. Okay. Then the last one, and definitely my favorite so far, is the Tokyo Zodiac Murders. I would say the writing in this is what drags it down. And that was also similar to my experience for Murder in the Cricket House. I would give the writing in this a 3.5, and I would give the plot of this a 4.5. So I'll give it a 4. This is again, kind of a book within a book or a dual timeline a little bit, but it mostly reads like a cold case book. Yeah, actually, I would take that back. It's not a dual timeline. This is a cold case book, which thank God, because I definitely prefer that to a dual timeline. And it's a notorious serial murder in the 1930s in Japan. So like pre-war, I think this was the murders take place in like 36. And it was all targeting this one blended family. So there's the dad, he has an ex-wife, a current wife, and the current wife also had children from another marriage. So it's a very blended family, but it's all daughters. He also has some nieces, and the victims of this crime are all of these younger generation of women. And he left this diary behind. So he's murdered, but they find this diary describing this horrific serial murder he wants to do with his daughters and nieces in order to do this occult ritual involving astrology. I thought that was an interesting angle just because I don't think of Western astrology as being popular in Japan, but it does actually address that in the book, that it's not common. It's a weird thing that he's this obsessed with that. And yeah, and then we come to the present when a new clue has emerged, or a new deathbed confession letter kind of thing has emerged, and our two POV detectives are now looking into it, trying to solve this old cold case. I think that this book would have been 4.5 or 5 stars if it hadn't had so much info dumping. The first half of this book is info dumping the cold case. And yeah, I arbitrarily opened Act 2, which is about halfway. This is when the actual good part of the book starts. All of this is info dumping and setup. And I just think a better writer could have figured out how to do that without 141 pages of that before we get 200 pages of the actual good story. So that's the issue I have with this, is it's so much info dumping. And once again, there's a lot of misogyny in this, and a lot of sexual violence, and sexualized violence at least. And a lot of women be crazy. So I just think I've hit my limit with that for now. But I did really enjoy this, and if you can get through that, this was written I think in 81, it's set in 79 and 36. It does not have, I don't love that aspect of it, but again, so much of it takes place in the 30s. I have a little bit more grace for that. But yeah, I kind of hit my limit with that. But really, fundamentally, my issue with this is in its structure and writing, not in that per se. But the actual mystery, the serial killer cold case part, very entertaining. And I would say the last 100 pages are page turning. Couldn't put it down. Was just woo, I'm in it now. So I just wish that it had a more graceful way to get to those last 100 pages, and then it could have been even higher rating for me. So definitely a success. But we're going to take a week off, read a couple of other things, and then come back to this project. Hey there. I finished another book after taking a little break, which was good because I think it gave me fresh energy. So, The Master Key by Masako Tagawa. This proved one of my hypotheses about the misogyny situation. Because I was reading through this, and let me tell you the setup. So the setup is that there is essentially a women's boarding house, and there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of different things happening in parallel, kind of almost interconnected vignettes or short stories. So we have all these different women who, there's a missing child, there's different cover-up kind of things happening. There and there's lots of snooping and investigating by different women, I'm trying not to give any spoilers. I'll just leave it there because it gets very tied up together. So, and it's also so short that I don't want to give too much away. Let's see if there's anything. When the master key to all 150 rooms is stolen, the residents are gripped by paranoia, who is sneaking about and prying into matters they thought long forgotten. Bit by bit, the true story of the boarding house's sinister past emerges, a tale of deceit, kidnapping, and murder with the deadly repercussions in the present. There you go. So I would say that the action, this reads kind of like a noir maybe, or like a gritty suspense, which plot-wise, that's not necessarily my favorite subgenre of crime writing, but I thought the writing in this was really good. And when I was reading it, I was like, oh, I'm so impressed that this author is able to show so many unlikable women without it becoming misogynistic. Okay, this is proving that that's possible. And then when I was looking into this author, because I was like, I'd like to read more, it turns out Misako is a lady. There we go. That maybe, I mean, you know, not always. I'm not saying that women are always better at writing other women. We certainly have internalized misogyny as well. And there's definitely actually flashes of that. I think it's fair to say it's not like this is free of misogyny, but it just shows, it kind of like reinforced my hypothesis of like, yeah, some of these male writers writing women are not processing some internalized prejudice they have against them, or playing into tropes about women that this author I think avoids. There's a lot of profoundly unlikable women in this, but it very rarely veers into what I would just describe in terms of the vibe as feeling misogynistic. So yeah, proof that it can be done in this tradition, but maybe that it is a weak spot of Japanese male authors. To be fair, weak spot of most male authors, depending on, I think it's just like less a trope maybe in contemporary, well, not even contemporary, but like I think misogyny as a plot device is a lot less common in British and American mystery of the 20th century. It certainly exists in different forms, but in terms of like being central to the plot or central to characterization, I just think it exists with slightly different valences in those traditions. So anyway, interesting finding. Like I said, the plot of this is just like not necessarily my like taste-wise my favorite, but I really respect how this was crafted. Like, I think this is a very well-crafted book. I really like the writing, and I definitely would like to read more from this author. I think that her biggest book looks like it's The Lady Killer, which I remember thinking I wouldn't like that, but now that I've read this, and it's not necessarily a subgenre that's my favorite, but I still enjoyed it, I think I probably will try The Lady Killer. I'm going to put that on my TBR because, yeah, I enjoyed her writing. So, yeah, interesting. Maybe I had a predetermined hypothesis, so I'm just looking for evidence to support it, but this does seem to support my working hypothesis, so we'll see. I'll report back once I've read some more. Hey there. Before I go to bed, thought I would tell you about the book I just wrapped up and the book I read recently. Both of these I would say probably settle out at about a 3.5. I'd call this a 3 to 3.5 star, and this like a 3.5 to 4. This is the one I just finished. The Man Who Died 7 Times is a really fun premise. It's a time loop story. Our dude has always had the ability, or like the gift / curse of repeating a day 7 times, but he has like no control over when that's going to happen, which I thought was a cool idea for how to make the time loop part work. And he gets into a time loop when his contentious extended family is home, visiting his now rich granddad, and there's like inner family generational drama, and his granddad dies, but because he's in a time loop, he keeps reliving the day his granddad was killed over and over again, trying to figure out who done it. So it's a fun premise. I think the execution was so-so. And guys, this was written in the 90s. It was only recently translated, but it was written in the 90s, and we still have cousin incest. So I don't know. I mean, I'll give you a little bit of a pass on that stuff up through, let's say, like 1950-ish. But like, come on. Why do we still have this in 1990s? I also feel like our main character was a little bit of a manic pixie dream boy, and everybody was in love with him, which I find annoying. So I don't know, this was fun but not amazing. But I really liked the plot and setup of this, but the characters and writing were only so-so. This, I really loved the plot. The writing was fantastic. And then these are interconnected short stories, which I didn't realize, and I love that. So yeah, like if you put what this book is good at and this book is good at together, we would have a 5-star book. But I'd say the actual plot of this is like meh, and I think the horror elements are kind of there, but it's very evocative, and I really like the writing. So this doesn't have any kind of description on the back, and I honestly think you should just know that this is it says 11 dark tales, so I thought it was just straight up short stories. I think that this works better for me when I conceptualize it as interconnected short stories versus a short novel. I think if you try to think of it as like truly one story, the plot deficiencies become even clearer. But I think thinking of this as a bunch of like grisly crime horror type short stories, and they're very short, they're like 10 to 15 pages each. I think if that's your framing for this, it works better. And yeah, the writing was really evocative. It had really cool setups for some of the stories. I don't know that it all comes together, and the character part I think is pretty flat, but it's a cool premise. And like I said, I'm just kind of a sucker for interconnected short stories, so that was like an exciting surprise that that's what this was. So this makes me even more excited to read The Memory Police, because I really got along with Yoko Ogawa's writing, really liked that. And yeah, I would say this was successful. Yeah, I give both of these 3.5 stars-ish, this on the lower end, this on the higher end of that 3 to 4 star range. But yeah, we still have, I think, 3 books left on my TBR. I'm definitely going to read The Clock House Murders. I was going to make that my birthday book, and that just didn't work out with timing stuff. So yeah, I will definitely read that before the end of this vlog. I may or may not read the other 2, but yeah, we'll find out. Checking in, at least 1 more book to go. So let's see what happens. Hey, so hopefully you cannot tell that I'm having a little flare again, but I think I'm ready to bring this video to a close, just because I think I have filled my appetite for Japanese mysteriousness for now. So I have 2 books to tell you about, one of which is new, one of which I was gonna read. Let's start with Strange Houses. This is the book club pick for one of my book clubs I'm in, and I thought, Japanese mystery, I'll add it to the mix. This is not good, but I did have a weirdly great time in it. I would objectively give this like a 2-star, but for my enjoyment, I'd give it like a 3.5. So I don't know, maybe like a 2.5. There's so many logical leaps in this. Basically, there's this weird house that the narrator has a friend that is thinking about buying it. He's like, there's something weird in the vibe of this house. Can you help me figure out what it is and if I should buy it? Our narrator goes to an architect friend of his, and like an insane story unfolds from there. Like there's so much just logical leaps and nonsense, but it is fun. It's very short, and it's just sort of like campy nonsense that was fun. Is it high quality? No. But I wasn't mad that I read it, and I do think we will have an interesting book club discussion about it. If nothing else, LOLing at some of the inferences. I'm just thinking, like, if I was a professional and somebody asked my professional opinion about something and I made the leap that this guy does initially that turns out to be correct, like, what kind of crazy world would you be living in? Anyway. Okay, and then the last book I read for this is The Clock House Murders by Yukito Ayatsuji, my goat. This was really good. I will say I was hoping this might be another 5-star, and it's not, just because I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but basically there are some very strong similarities between this and other books in the series that made the impact of how this unfolds a little lessened. And I will also say it's maybe the longest in the series, and I'm gonna say that it could easily be cut by a third. There's so much wind up to get to the real, like, heart of the matter for this, but the ending is so satisfying, even if it does have a somewhat, again, there's some resonances to earlier books in the series, but it's still just really well crafted and executed and very satisfying. The setup is, in this series, is we have a detective. I just said something that I realized was a spoiler when I was setting up the series, so I guess I need to keep this as brief as possible. We do have a recurring detective, and there's also a recurring nemesis, because there's this architect who has made all of these batshit bonkers houses that murderousness happens in. Basically, anybody who's employing this architect at this point, I think you just need to assume is up to no good. But we've got a group of people who are going for, like a paranormal investigation related to this newspaper. There's a college group that's going, and yeah, if you are just a good old-fashioned whodunit lover, I think this will make you happy. I guess it's not incest in this one, but there are child brides in this. I don't know. One of my takeaways from this whole thing is just, like, I need to do some cultural research on sexual and romantic norms in Japan and how they have or have not changed over the last 100 years. Because some of these I'm like, they're older. That probably makes sense. But The Man Who Died 7 Times, that came out in, like, the late 90s and early aughts. So I'm like, I don't know. Something is a little interesting. But anyway, all that to say, I think we're going to leave it here, because I do have the Memory Police and the Edagawa collection of short stories, but I'm just out of steam for this project, so we'll leave those for future events, for future reading enjoyment. And I have no idea what my numbers are looking like, so I will throw you over to a summary of that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you thought about any of the books I read. Based on what I have said about these mysteries, if you have recommendation for Japanese mysteries you think I would like, please let me know. Or if you think that there's another regional mystery tradition that you think I would enjoy based on my enjoyment of Japanese and British mysteries, let me know. Scandinavian mysteries have not really been my favorite. Like, I have a few that I've enjoyed, but I haven't consistently felt like that was my taste or vibe in mystery. But let me know if you've got thoughts on that. Yeah, I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you're well. Please take care of your community, family, all those people, and hit the bell if you want to know when I'm going to be back. And we'll just talk soon.